All right. So, welcome everybody. This one is going to be potentially a very short one. There's a lot of reading, a lot of considerations to be had. Today we are talking about Microsoft Defender for Identity. All right. So, one thing I want to do before really going into this, let me stop my screen share for one moment and kind of go full screen on everybody. Um, Not everybody is going to want, I feel like I'm talking like Trump. Oh, sorry. But not everybody's going to want identity for their local domain. Well, why? So Defender ATP is going to be your all knowing EDR, for a lack of better terms. Um, my personal opinion, Defender ATP is a good tool. It is not a great tool, right? We've had three cases this year alone where ransomware was fully deployed, or the threat actor got into the environment, fully deployed the ransomware payload before Defender ATP started popping off with alerts and doing its auto isolation. Furthermore, the real big problem is unisolating the devices. In two of the three cases, when you went into Defender ATP and went to unisolate a device, it wouldn't unisolate. You would have to download a bat script, run that against the device, and then it would unlock that device so that way you could be able to use it again online and in a remote fashion. So it caused a lot of problems for clients who were the using VMs in Azure and AWS, because a lot of times you had to do a lot of different funky things to get remote access shell going for these VMs. So it definitely caused some funkiness, to say the least. So back to the original question of what is this for, is to gather all the data inside of your local environment if you're running in a hybrid cloud environment. Again, for those who are new, hybrid cloud is you have cloud infrastructure and you have local on-premise infrastructure that is syncing together. Go back and take a look at where we talked about doing Azure AD Connect, things of that nature, to be able to bridge that gap. Now, this is taking that telemetry from your domain controllers and things of that nature and pushing that up into the Azure instance. So hopefully that answers any of your questions about exactly what this is. As I go through, I'll share all the links so that way you can be able to do your own research and kind of go through that. Again, if you're new here, welcome. Who am I? My name is Eric Taylor. I'm the founder and chief forensic here at Barricade Cyber Solutions. Pleasure to meet you. Where we are literally on a mission at Barricade Cyber to help all businesses be safer tomorrow than you are today. And that's exactly why you showed up for this course. You want to make sure your 365 tenancy is potentially safer tomorrow with the configurations that you are implementing today. Uh, Defender for ATP deployment is to collect signals from your on-premise hybrid, on-premise identity infrastructure, Active Directory, infrastructure, and to detect threats. So, as it detects AD logs, local infrastructure, things of that nature, it's going to beacon that up. And this really is around your Active Directory instance, because when you're going into that hybrid environment, you are setting the endpoints as an authority to use the LDAP against the Entra ID, formerly Azure AD. I'm going to kind of reiterate that because they're really, really pushing more and more. All the portals are finally migrating over to Entra ID. There's very, very few that are actually in portal.azure.com and Azure AD. So more and more, Entra ID is becoming, at the time of this recording of October 22nd, is becoming a very, very well polished platform instead of having things in multiple places. So as it's advancing, I'll use the proper verbiage. So everybody definitely consider using the term Entra ID and correcting those who use Entra ID instead of using Azure AD. So this does have a lot, deploying the Defender sensor, all that, the domain controller, you must be a Windows Server 2019 or later, um, ideally. So you can do 2016, not really recommended because when is Server 2016 end of life? Um, End of life dot date. Here's another good site. If you've never heard of it, end of life dot date is a very good tool when you're trying to find out, not just Windows, but just everything. Windows Server 2019. Ta-da-ta-da. All right, Windows Server 2019. Okay, so support ended a while ago, but that's extended support, security support. Yeah. So, I mean, you do have long-term support contracts, which is um, LTSC. So let me zoom that in for everybody to see. So the official support, active support ended 6 years ago. But you kind of go there and you got to make sure that you're on 10.0.17763 to make sure you're getting that extended support. So, like I said, end of life date for all of your different things, and it goes in through Apple OS, Amazon Linux, just all sorts of stuff. This is actually pretty cool. The frameworks now. I did not know that. Oh, before I go on an ADD moment and go down paths that I didn't plan on doing on today's topic. So, um, I would definitely do newer than 2019. Um, I know some people are not able to yet. I completely understand that, but definitely try to do 2020 or 2022. Yeah, 2022 or newer. Um, so definitely please do that. I mean, 2016 is not supported anymore. So, but we understand, right? We have a lot of clients who are in the manufacturing industry, and sometimes their stuff breaks when you start introducing new things, right? So anyway, what you're going to do is essentially you're going to go here to start everything off. Like I said in the beginning, when you click on this, it's going to spin up and it's going to say, waiting. Mine in our test environment for the Fortify365.com account it took over an hour just for Defender for Identity to spin up. You think when you create a new tenant that it's there, it's not. You have to actually go in there and actually tell it, okay, I am ready for you, and kind of go from there. As you stand this thing up, you are eligible. You have eligible domain controllers without a Defender for Identity sensor installed. Download details. Just so you know, we don't have any domain controllers in there. From here, you'll have your activation. Again, without having one in here, when you download the sensor, it's going to check in, and then you have to do an activation. So yeah, it checks in, then you activate it, and then it becomes an active sensor in there. So um, the only reason I think Microsoft does this as a manual process by default is, if somebody got a hold of your session or your identity from the installation, then you couldn't just have rogue servers automating and authenticating against there. If you have higher vote of confidence than I do, then you can always do automatically activate eligible servers right here. And I can zoom in on this so you guys see this, right? So if you are like, yeah, everything's cool in Zumundafu, um, you can definitely do that. To be fair, I have yet in all my years just seen a rogue domain controller try to beacon in and have a sensor installed on it. I'm sure there has been times that people have seen that, but I have not seen one. But I am more of a zero trust individual than, an auditing and verification type of thing. So not many people that we interact with, unless they're going through an upgrade process, are adding new domain controllers inside of their environment. So, if you're doing that, if you're adding a new branch, if you're, doing things, you're going to know about this. So, adding these guys into and approving is kind of your workflow already. So, if not, it should be. But, it's another step for you to go to. So I could see where over the course of 5 or 10 days you're spinning up 10 extra VMs that be as domain controllers, and it may be beneficial for you. Then okay, I can see that argument, and then making sure you set a calendar reminder to go back in there and set it back to manual again is my personal recommendation. Once the domain controllers are pulled in, you'll see your Active Directory service account, DCAs for short, get populated in there. You can manage your domains, you can set up VPNs, you can do all kinds of stuff that was in your Active Directory to be pulled into this particular one. What we're going to be mostly focusing on is adding sensitivity accounts and honeypots, right? So sensitivity is you're identifying in Defender who are the most sensitive in your organization, like any of your C-level, any of your IT, things like that that you're worried about user impersonation with is really where you're wanting to set your sensitivity. So in this particular situation, let's see if I can do this. Okay, so yeah, it's not going to do that. That's what I was afraid of. So because we don't have a domain controller already set up, we can't set those. So this is only going to, I was under the impression that this pulled from cloud and local, but I was wrong. They're not there yet. So this is all pretty much around the local domain account. I've seen some releases over the past couple of weeks where they were adding the cloud, but maybe this one, our tenant hasn't got updated to that, or it's a roadmap. I'll have to go back and double check that. But when you're, oh yeah, for your domain UPN. Okay, so you're going to add, your devices that are your users who are you're deemed as sensitive devices. Are you you have potential OT that is very imperative, that is considered sensitive. You're in a CMMC environment, you're working with a dev kit, you're doing all this stuff, definitely look at your devices. Honestly, as we've stated before, groups are very, very important. Being able to auto assign users and devices based off of a grouping is very, very good. So being able to say, I'm going to create a group of OT devices, and anytime I add a device to an OT or IT or C-suite or whatever terminology you want to do, all the portals that you are tagging to a group, it automatically applies. It's almost like, permissions on automation, right? So definitely consider doing groups if you're doing that. If you want to do definitely want to do honey tokens. Let me actually get that document for you. Now, while I'm doing this, honey token, it really is an account, right? It's not the traditional like honey token or honey pots that you're used to. Like you're setting up a VM for your SSH, FTP, web servers, things of that nature, right? This is all around honey tokens to a user device or user account. I personally don't recommend doing honey tokens to a device. Your mileage may vary because a lot of times when you're enumerating users, you're not enumerating devices against an Active Directory. Set up honey token. You're going to go after the user itself. When you're dropping LSAS, you're going to set that up, right? You're going to want to go after the user itself. So setting up honey tokens for users, aka if you're going to go through, it's going to monitor like RDP traffic and stuff like that for that specific user. And then it's going to alert you, right? So this is the document that we kind of go through when we was first starting to figure out how to set this stuff up a couple of years ago. But this thing kind of goes around the sensitivity entries and stuff like that. Like you said, or like I said earlier, you're going to tag your individual users, things of that nature. But it had honey tokens sitting over here, and it doesn't anymore. But yeah, that's really around honey tokens. Any questions about sensitivity or honey tokens so far? I know we have 22 people here. Before I go on to the next one, I want to make sure I'm answering any potential questions here. So from Chris Hansen, yes, honey tokens is setting up a fake user account. You're looking for activity on that particular user, right? So let's say people who are part of Team SC, um, they set up a Carl account, and when Carl is tripped, someone's trying to log in as Carl somewhere, that honey token is going to pop off. It's like, hold on, nobody knows about Carl. Why is Carl attempted to log in to the shipping department, right? Or accounts payable, or what, enter department name here. So that's really what it is. Now you're creating a global admin user, but they are a fake account. So the question is, do we set these accounts up to look more quote unquote sweet than other accounts? No. Whatever your naming convention is for users, I would just set it up the same way. All right, so yeah, just make sure you have that bookmarked. It looks like it's all finally starting to migrate over to that now. Then again, this could have just been something. I know another tenant. They must be older than even my tenant. So, and they had all of the services broke down in there. So anyway, definitely keep an eye on that, because one thing you definitely want to know is, as things go forward, you want to make sure that you're looking at these things to be like, oh, um, this is the stuff that's kind of going on. This may be why you're not able to sign in. This is why you may be having potential email issues. So all that is good. So if you need to, this is the one thing that drives me nuts. All right, we're going to let you know about a potential health issue, but it's like, okay, if your email is down, how are you going to get notification? So one thing we kind of do is just like, as much as I hate recommending this, I always ask them to have an out of bands email for Defender and maybe Sentinel. So if Exchange itself is having an issue, a lot of times the Defender, Sentinel, and a couple of the other applications will send it out in out of bounds for Exchange, and you're more likely to potentially get it if there's like a global issue. Let's just say hypothetically, like AWS was having this week, and you may be more likely to get that. So they're really just doing this. The one thing that my notes did show that a lot of tenants do not have is syslog service. So if you're enabled this, you can actually start now ingesting your syslog. Those who don't know, syslog is like your network equipment, so like your firewalls, your switches, things of that nature. You can actually put in once you have your domain controllers and everything brought in, you can actually configure them to be a syslog server and start pulling in your firewall logs and things like that. The typical stuff you would do with a SIM. like Splunk or Logstash or um, name your SIM, your elk stack or whatever. But you can actually start ingesting your SIM data um, into Defender. So that's something that's really, really cool. Unfortunately, it does require a domain on the device on the network that's tied into this. So, if you've been looking at a SIM and being able to start ingesting that data, definitely look at Defender, the syslog notifications for Defender, and kind of going through that particular one. Here you can go into, I mean, just to kind of give this thing a round off, exclusions by detection type. Let's say hypothetically, some of these, you're going to want to go in and take a look at um, these certain rules. And let's just say hypothetically, you have users that are always connecting to suspicious VPNs, like they are known to be Proton users, and Microsoft is flagging Proton and NordLayer as suspicious VPN connections. It's like there's no way we're going to get around that particular situation, and we're going to just eliminate Carl from being able to be flagged from that. So, definitely add those particular users. I would say do this sparingly. Most of the stuff you're not going to want to exclude. Suspected LTM authenticating tampering, you definitely don't want to exclude anybody from that. You know, WannaCry is as old as WannaCry ransomware is. Would you be surprised there are people still trying to deploy the payload for WannaCry all the effing time? It's insane. It really, really is. Suspicious communication of DNS, definitely golden ticket. You don't want to be, excluding anybody about. So, I mean, definitely just familiarize yourself with these rules that are these detections, and, make sure that they all fit for you, right? And kind of go through that. Um, this is one that you should never play with. I say don't ever go into here, but if you want to globally exclude an entity, aka Carl, um, Carl is king, and Carl can do no wrong, and everything that Carl does is great and awesome. Then you can add Carl to the global excluded identities, and you'll never be alerted by by Carl's activities ever again. Defender is kind of cool. It's making some headway. I say always implement it and kind of go through these settings and kind of know what it's about, know how to do stuff. You a year ago, 2 years ago, you know, endpoint management really sucked in Microsoft 365. Today, we can do a lot of cool stuff. It's not a replacement for an RMM. Like you can't get rid of your LabTech or Datto or Kaseya or whatever tool that you may be using for an RMM yet, but it's getting closer and closer. Um, so it's really cool. So I think Defender will make a spot where you can do some pretty cool stuff with it in the next couple of years. It's just not, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's well enough to be it's your only thing that you're doing. So, um, and again, if you're cloud only, kind of like we are over here at Barricade, we're cloud only. We don't have. I deprecated my on-premise Exchange servers years ago, and we don't have any of that stuff anymore. Again, definitely go back and look at this document, how to get things going. Again, you can integrate with your identity services that we didn't really talk about a whole lot. Well, this one is definitely a lot more reading. If it is applicable to you, this is definitely the page you want to go to learn about all the stuff that you got going on with Defender for identity deployment, aka a Active Directory user. Um, The one thing I do not like about this is like when you look at SentinelOne and CrowdStrike and some of the other ones, they're doing like identity protection as the cloud identity, aka your Google Workspace or Okta or Microsoft LDAP, whatever the case is. And it's all the cloud identities. But Defender is rolling it backwards, saying, no, we're doing local as identity versus the cloud identity. So it can get confusing when you're dealing with different terminologies and things of that nature. Again, thank y'all so much for coming in. If y'all ever need help, this is what we do all the time. We're just going through phase one of our Fortify 365 service offering that we do. I can't stress this enough. If y'all want some really honest security, this Monday, Hell or High Water, episode 3 will come out. Brutally honest security. We'll be talking about all the latest stuff that's happened, of course, this week, and anything that I have seen of interest that happened over the past couple of weeks worth mentioning. And please go out there, tell people about it. Tell them to go to webinars.fortify365.com if they may be interested in this content as well. With that, thank you so much.